Welcome back, everybody. Now let's talk about the new Table 19. Table 19 has been a significant improvement over the 2018 edition. The 2018 edition of Table 19 was the same table it had been there. Well, I can remember Table 19, the old table, being there back when I started in the trade in the early 80s. That's when I started my apprenticeship. I do remember it. I had my first look in a code book in 1979, or yes, 1979 is when I started. And Table 19 was the same then as it was up until the end of the 2018. And when 2021 had a new table taking its place. So the Table 19 that was previous, it wasn't a bad table. It was just really, really, really difficult to navigate because you didn't know where to look for the conditions of use. You didn't know about the cable. You had to look many places for one particular type of cable to see what its actual designation, what its use was for. And then it was duplicated many times for the type of use. And as you can see, maximum allowable conductor temperature, armor cable, Tech 90, AC 90, and so on. All of these were kind of repeated all the way through. And then you had the notes. The notes were, let's take you to the end of the table here. So this is the old Table 19. This is not the new Table 19. We're just kind of do a little recap here. So we started on one page, finished off a page, and then made it all the way through to, well, almost 2 full pages of notes. So you had to always come back to the notes to actually see what the reference was. Now, that was all okay. It was really a clunky table to work with. So now what we have, here's the new Table 19. The new table 19, the task force that rebuilt this table did a very good job. This was a group of individuals that worked together and they tried to make it as simple as possible. And if you look at the table here, so you just have to kind of, once you know the structure of the table, you'll kind of understand that, okay, this is all quite simple. Keep in mind, don't worry about any of the check marks here. Don't worry about any of this stuff in here right now in the body of the table. What we've got is grouper classification row, and it goes across the top here. And so this row here, as an example, thermoset insulated conductor. We've got the CSA type designation, R90, RW75, and RW90. Now, keep in mind as well with this table, if the cable or the conductor does not exist in this table, it is not approved for use in Canada. Now, okay, let's go down to the next row, maximum conductor temperature. So an R90 is good for 90 degrees C, an RW75 is good for 75 degrees C, and an RW90 is good for 90 degrees C. All pretty standard. So, having said that, now this top 3 rows is really about the conductor and its manufacturing type and its designations. Now, if we go to the next page, and we're just going to go to the exact same next page, and these 3 rows have the same meaning, but grouper classification. So now we've got a non-metallic sheath cable. And then the next group of conductors is cables not having metal armor or metal sheath. So we've got a CIC, a tray cable, a DLO. And then again, we have the conductors, the conductor temperature rating. So NMD90 has got a 90 degrees C rating. NMWU has a 60 degrees C rating. And if we follow this along, again, we've got more cables, type FCC, type FCC is a flat carpet cable, GTO, hoistway cables. These are all specific cables and they don't have an armor. And we keep on following through. We can find FAS cable, fire alarm and signal cables, with an armor. And first one is unarmored, then the second one is with an armor, then with an armor with a jacket. And all very simple to look at. So that is how we look at each page is identical, but with a different set of cables on it. The next page, we've got cables having a metal armor, AC90, ACG90, ACGWU, ACWU90, a Tech90. And then it goes on further and further. But let's now go back to, let's look up Lumex. So what is Lumex? Well, our code considers Lumex to be, its designation is a non-metallic sheath cable. And what I'm actually going to do here is, let's just go back. I think I go this way. There we go. So here we have Lumex here. So I've just got a couple of things on here right now. And Lumex, so this would be your 14.2 Lumex. It's got a two grounded conductors, so a bare bond conductor, a grounded conductor, and a ungrounded conductor being the black. And then we've got, so the yellow designation is actually a number 12. And this cable comes in many different configurations, but it is a 300 volt, 90 degree C cable. This is non-metallic sheath cable, so an NMD90. In Canada, we call it Lumex. In the US, they call it Romex. Now, we can look at that and we can say, okay, well, how is this? Oh, one more table over. Table 19, so non-metallic sheath cable. I only have to look at this one page because not only is every page the same across the top, the 3 rows, but these 2 columns are identical on every page. Just look at that. So here we've got, I'm going to kind of hide it up at the top here. We're just going to say, okay, let's look at location, can be used for, and when installed. So when you look at that, every one of the, keep in mind again, forget about all these check marks. You've got location is dry, damp, or wet. Can be used for consumer service, feeder, branch circuits, control instrumentation circuits, class 2 circuits, fire alarm circuits. And then when installed, can it be exposed, concealed, in a raceway, in a cable tray, and so on. So looking at Lumex or non-metallic sheath cable NMD90 as an example, we can look down the column here. And it is good for a dry location. It is good for a damp location. Cannot use it in a wet location. We could use an NMWU in a wet location. Then we've got, can be used for consumer service. No, absolutely not. Can it be used for feeder? Yes. Now I'm just going to jump back to the consumer service again. So if there's an overcurrent, so what they're meaning by the consumer service, the conductors, that is we'll say between a meter and a panel board or a disconnect or the utility compartment of a residential panel. That's considered the consumer service. After that disconnect, it is no longer considered the consumer service. And if you did, say, have a meter with a built-in main breaker, such as a 125 or a 200 amp unit, after that main breaker, it can be Lumex because now it is considered to be a feeder. It's no longer considered to be the consumer service after the main breaker. Branch circuits, control and instrument. So it can be used for feeder, cannot be used for branch circuit, cannot be used for control and instrumentation circuits, can be used for class 2 circuits. For fire alarm, yes, with notes in these rules. So you'd have to refer to these 2 rules. Can it be exposed? Yes. Can it be concealed? Yes. Now, you'd also have to want to make sure, because there are limitations when it can be exposed. You'd have to go to section 12. Can it be in a raceway? It doesn't say that in here, but Lumex or NMD below, I want to say 4 feet, maybe even 5 feet, has to be mechanically protected. Cable trays, can't put it in a cable tray. I can't direct bury it, but the NMWU may be direct bury because it is considered to be a outdoor cable. You can bury it, it can go in a wet location. Cannot be exposed to sunlight. You cannot put it in a plenum. And in a plenum, it doesn't even meet the criteria. It doesn't have an FT1 rating. Outdoor overhead may not be. So now for looking at NMD90, it has told me everything that I need to know where I can and cannot install it just in this one row. It's made it very simple. They've done a very good job with table 19. Now, let's just, as an example, let's just move through here because we've got every type of cable in here. What about AC90 BX? It can only be installed in a dry location, can be used for consumer service, can be used for feeder, branch circuit, control and instrumentation, class 2, may be used for fire alarm. You would have to refer to those two rules out of section 32. It cannot be installed in a raceway, and it may be exposed and it may be concealed. You cannot direct bury it because it is a dry location cable only. It cannot be exposed to sunlight because it's going to be inside your building. May be installed in a plenum. And outdoor overhead. You could also, in here, cables having a metal armor, a Tech 90. A Tech 90 is probably, I'm going to say, is one of the more versatile. You can do anything with it. Same as an ACWU. So ACWU, both are 90 degrees C. Typically, ACWU, we look at as an aluminum conductor, and Tech is a copper conductor, but that's not necessarily true. Manufacturers do make a Tech in aluminum, and I just want to go back here and just to make it familiar so people can kind of see if you're not familiar with what a Tech is or an ACWU. Here's a Tech cable here. So a Tech cable has an inner jacket, and then it's got a metal armor, and then it's got an external outer jacket. So it's actually got 2 jackets and 1 metal armor. And it does come in aluminum. You can buy it. It's not very common. But most of the times when we have an metal armor cable, it does not have this inner rubber jacket. It's got an outer rubber jacket, and that is what we call that's the ACWU. Just throwing that in just for education's sake. And going back to table 19. So we've got our Lumex, we've got our Tech 90s, we've got our ACWU, AC90. We also have all the communication cables in here as well. We've got the CM, CMR, and CMP, and these are very commonly used cables for data, for residential use now, for offices. It is a very common Cat 5, Cat 6 cable. And the CM and the CMR and the CMP all have a different FT rating. And FT we discussed in section 2, so FT1 and FT1, FT4 and FT6. FT1 is for a combustible building, FT4 is a non-combustible building, FT6 is for a plenum in either of those 2 structures. And let's just go and have a quick peek at what those are. I've got those sitting right here as well. Brought those in here just to give everybody kind of a look at what they are. A CM versus a CMR versus a CMP. They're all the same cable, but it is the outer jacket that does make the difference. And these, I mean, if you do a lot of communication work, you've seen boxes of these, you've installed lots of this stuff. So again, we've got the CM used in office environments such as desktop cables connections. CMR may be used in vertical cable chase between floors. and the CMP can be used in that plenum space. That is the plenum space that actually is the biggest concern. This would be the FT6 rating in here. And you can see they've got the CM would be the FT1, CMR is an FT4, and CMP is an FT6. And for residential use in the house, you could use a CM. You wouldn't have to use a CMR. You could use a CM cable because it only requires an FT1 rating for a combustible building. Now let's go back. So even further, we've got more communication cables and we have no notes. And that's the best part of this. We can get everything we need right from each page that we're looking for. It's a nice change. It's very simple to work with. And I think because the other table 19 was quite daunting and it was complicated. So it should be very easy for people to see now and to work their way through to find out what actually a cable is good for. Thank you.